Students go to university to prepare for careers, but there's a disconnect between university curriculums and what industry needs on the job. There is little collaboration between universities and industries to close this gap so that students can be employable. Higher education that's tailored and customized to meet the demands of the industry is critical for bridging this gap. A discussion panel on how to bridge the gap between industry and academia. Ways to enable students with work-ready skills. Dr. Laura Dowling has 25 years of corporate operations management experience and 15 years of experience in educational leadership. Professor Daniel Chatham, a professor at Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey. Dr. Dennis D. Pasquale, coach and consultant, lecturer at the University of Florida. Dr. J.R. Regan, CEO, Idea Explorer Global, and a cyber senior security expert at the UNDP. Human Dweek, business consultant, founder and CEO of Serial Entrepreneur. Dr. Ajith Kumar, the Vice President of Skyline University, Nigeria. Dr. Ghassan Isa, Dean of Information Technology School, Skyline University College in the UAE. And Rais Mumtaz. Welcome.
Greetings, everyone. We're here at the World Higher Education Ranking Summit. Our topic of our conversation in this hour is how to bridge the gap between industry and academia, ways to enable students with work-ready skills. The primary purpose of a university education is to acquire the necessary skills and knowledge for a chosen career and become fully prepared for the real world of work. Universities are failing to deliver at great financial burden to the student consumer and increasing dissatisfaction of industry employers who claim graduates lack basic skills in multiple areas: critical thinking and problem solving, self-management, leadership, resilience and stress tolerance, interpersonal skills, intercultural and diversity fluency, and communicating effectively verbally and in writing. Currently, there is little collaboration between university and industry to close this gap so students can be employable. Higher education that is tailored and customized to meet the demands of industry is critical for bridging this gap. In a dynamically changing environment, universities must be plugged into the needs of industry, understand the trends, and the kinds of skills that will be needed for roles. Collaboration of this kind would enable curriculum agility to meet the demands of industry. Collaborative relationships and partnerships would enable students to get industry-relevant exposure during higher education. Exposure enhances student confidence and ability to take on emerging employment opportunities. Industry benefits by getting candidates with work-ready skills. The rapid pace of change and technological innovation are resulting in a workforce skills gap. A 2020 McKinsey study found that 43% of respondents reported current skills gap in industry, and 44% of respondents indicated a skills gap within the next 5 years. To meet this demand, universities should work with industry to develop and strengthen program curriculums in 5 areas: complex problem solving, for example, analytical thinking and innovation, critical thinking and critical analysis, creativity, originality, and initiative, reasoning, and ideation. Self-management is also important. For example, mental wellness, emotional resilience, change resilience and stress tolerance, and active learning. Working with people is an increasing priority. Leadership, management, interpersonal skills, and social influence should be priorities. Of course, technology use and development, such as technology design, programming, use, monitoring, and control. And finally, digital and financial literacy in a digital networked economy. I'm going to kick off and turn off to my esteemed colleagues here. We'll start with Ajit for some commentary.
Thank you, Laura. I think it's a good topic that we are deliberating and the need of the hour. Yes, there is a gap between the academia and industry. So universities prepare students for the industry, but once they join the industry finds them they're not ready to what we call it as be applying their skills and starting their job. The main gap is there is a need for us to integrate the curriculum with that of the industry requirements. That's number one. And also another important thing is to have faculty upskilling, and faculty who are training the students should have that industry exposure. They should be working with industries in short projects by which they also get the latest industry knowledge. And together, if it can be taken to the classes, it will have a lot of impact. And another important thing is having more internships, live projects for students to go into, not only into industries, even for the communities, to find out the real-time problems and try to find solutions, I think, which will give them more skills, which all the skills that you're mentioning about, they have to experience those skills by doing certain activities through their course. Now, it should not be always an exam, end of the semester, having an exam, midterm and final term. It should be more of project-based learning, where you identify problems, work on it, and then they try to move on and getting it done. I think COVID has given us a very good this thing where you can teach different options of teaching, different methods of getting things done. And today, one of the most important things that everybody is looking for innovation and entrepreneurship. And especially in countries like Nigeria, we need more job creators rather than job seekers. So I think universities have to create an ecosystem of entrepreneurship. And I would like to talk about the academic entrepreneurship ecosystems that most of the universities across the globe have, where the academicians, along with the students, create what we call it as startups on campuses, and they provide them, connect them with venture capitalists, ensure them to start up, and they go into the society, and that's a real contribution to the society where the education, university education is being carried out. So these are some of my few thoughts coming from Nigeria, and there's a lot of scope of what we call it as innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. And even you find the government also doing a lot of initiatives. And I think if the higher education institutions take up this, and if you are able to align the curriculum with the industry requirements, faculty upskilling, and also upskilling the skills of students also. Not only having the traditional education system, we should have professional skills education program also, where students acquire skills. Maybe they can use a blended way of teaching where you can use Coursera or Open to Study. You can have a combination of these things where you can create courses and programs where the student can get a degree, also get the skills that will help him to be successful in future. And I feel the education system would be changing in the coming years. I think not so far. We will not believe in only in one university, in one system. In future, students will have a combination that, yes, I will do this semester here. I will do a couple of courses from Coursera. I will do from that university, and they become employable and move forward. And that's going to be a challenge for all our university system. But I think that's going to be the future tomorrow. That's it for now. Thank you.
Beautiful. You said so many important things, really focused on partnership and collaboration globally, right? So that's very important. You also mentioned leveraging technology. There's new ways, innovative ways to do things and educate students. I love the idea of faculty upskilling and faculty with practical industry experience is critical, okay? Because somebody that's been, at a university in four walls with no practical experience has a very different perspective than somebody on the ground in the grassroots. So many important things that you said there. Gus, you're next.
Thank you. Well, being in academia since 1992, definitely bridging the gap between academia and industry has been always a major issue. Even though we try so many different ways to bridge the gaps, I think the gaps remain there. More serious work has to be done. First of all, we have to differentiate between developing countries and developed countries. Of course, developed countries are industrialized countries. They have more opportunities for jobs, high-level jobs. On the other hand, in developing countries such as the Middle East, mainly they are consumption markets. The type of jobs are different for graduates, and that gives us a bigger challenge. I also believe in some an issue like bridging the gap between industry and academia as a serious issue must be taken seriously. And I always believe in systematic procedures. I mean, nothing just comes by accident, because we have tried so many ways, and many of the issues mentioned by Dr. Ajit, yeah, we tried them. The issue of internship, the senior project, competitions, allowing students to compete outside, inviting industry as participants in these competencies, consultancies, and all that stuff. We have tried so many different ways, hoping to bridge the gap, including, of course, focusing on the students. So I believe that when we talk about a university or a school, every part of that school must provide their clear participation in the issue of bridging the gap. It just cannot be done by the school itself or the college itself. Rather than, I think the corporate office must be involved. The training centers must be involved. Even the purchasing department must be involved in that, because purchasing department or procurement, they deal with big companies, well-known companies such as well-known companies, Microsoft, Oracle, and so on. They have ties, good ties, where we can use that to benefit our students, to benefit our conferences, any activities. We can rely on such big companies. And the issue of innovation and entrepreneurship. These are issues that must be taken seriously. All the departments in the university must work together. As I said, and Dr. Ajit mentioned it, ecosystem, a complete ecosystem which consists of different components. Each component takes an input and gives an output. At the end, I want my graduates to be well prepared for their jobs in the future. And I want not just that, not to have them prepared, but I want the industry, whether inside that area where the school is, the universities, or outside that, to know that the graduates of this university are well equipped. I want them to say that, yeah, we've been there, we've seen their curriculums, we participated with in many of their activities. The issue or the idea of the external advisory council, where I think, this is something now standard in every school, to have 10 or 12 or 15 members consisting of well-known leaders from the industry or from the market, where they get really involved even in the structure of the curriculum and the programs itself, the outcomes. All that I think must be taken, not just to try a bit here or a bit there, but rather to flow in a complete system, where I know what the inputs are, and at the end, what are the expected outputs. And I think this is what I can say right now, and we can discuss other things as we go.
Thank you, Gus. So many important things that you noted, especially the stratification of economies has to be a consideration. But what I found really important about what you said is, and going back to Ajit, is this ecosystem, right?
Yes.
Where industry is involved in co-creation of curriculums, programs, and curriculums, so that it is more community-based, for the betterment of society across the globe. It's a beautiful vision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis.
Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. Thank you. A few things that I want to do with this is really look at it from a layered approach, or at least that's how we've taken it over here at UF. And the first thing, which Ajit basically spoke about, is the faculty diversity. How are you creating a good faculty diversity that includes individuals with a good theoretical knowledge and individuals with good industry knowledge? And there's multiple ways that we can do that so that we can engage our students properly, but not only just bringing the additional faculty on, but destroying or disabling those silos that often happen in higher education that may inhibit the ability of these faculty to collaborate. And of course, you have to incentivize that as well. The other thing that you want to look at is the macro curriculum. How are you creating curriculum on that macro level in terms of the courses that are being offered, in terms of the objectives from a various minor or major, and not just the curriculum in terms of academia, but co-curriculum in terms of student engagement outside of the classes is extremely important. Then, of course, the micro curriculum, what is happening inside the classes to engage those overarching themes, but maybe specifically within those particular course offerings so that the students are being pushed. And I know I heard it said before, but this means going beyond the standard memorization and repetition that our students do, but looking at how they can apply themselves, and particularly with these next few bullet points that I have, how they can apply themselves in a way that industry is going to find appealing when they look at someone who has a specific course or specific skills that they've listed that they've achieved in those particular courses. That requires partnerships and advisory. And because you basically spoke about that, you have your advisory councils, and that's something that we found incredibly valuable, is any partner from small business to business, maybe they have 50 employees or less, out to companies that are well over 50 years old with thousands of employees, so that we can get, again, that diversity of what experience matters, and not just those hard skills, but the soft skills that can pivot around those hard skills as our world continues to change and what we're doing. And that final piece would be alumni engagement. How are we continuing to engage our former students so that they can communicate what they saw as deficiencies once they've left the academy, once they've gone out and have been out for 5 years, and can reflect and say, I wish I had this skill in the class, but also the skills that you developed here really enabled me more so than my coworkers. And so I look at it as that 5-layer approach to how we can ensure that our students are meeting the expectations of industry, but also able to pivot, able to be agile, able to work around things such as COVID, such as what's happening in Europe right now, and the drastic changes that those things happen to bring to our business environment, or business in the case of what I teach.
Wow, lots of important stuff that you said there, Dennis. And faculty diversity, of course, is always a common topic. And how do you integrate theoretical and practical faculty experience is it always an interesting topic. I really liked your idea of knocking down silos in higher ed. I think a lot of us in higher ed are confronted with that on a regular basis. And it's interesting because we teach our students in our business courses how to break these silos down, and we are shackled and can't do it in the higher ed space. So I really like that. I like your idea of the alumni engagement. This is it's so obvious. Why aren't we doing it? Our students go into the work world, and then we don't leverage their experience post graduation. There's just a clear path to how are you experiencing your first job? How are you experiencing your second job? Which leads us to this partnership with our students throughout career, right? Through something like career services. And again, all of these things I'm sure you meant that can happen, macro, locally, and micro, because many of our students are working for corporations offshore. And what learning can occur through that relationship? Amazing stuff. Thank you, Dennis. Newman, you're next.
Naman, that was close though.
Naman.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to echo and commend my colleagues for getting us started. I think I'm going to dovetail a bit on some of that information and make some unique points as well. I'm taking a slightly different but similar approach to Dennis and looking at it from 4 specific perspectives: the student and faculty perspective, the alumni perspective, and the industry perspective. When we think about the student perspective, it's very easy, given the fact that this is a World Higher Education Conference, to look at it from a higher education lens. But I think it's equally as important to take a step back and look at it for one step behind. And that's the secondary education perspective, as we refer to it here in the United States. And that's high school. And how is that a proper pipeline into higher education? For instance, Laura, you kicked us off very well with some key points prior to this discussion regarding soft skills. Soft skills has a place in every industry. How are high school students then preparing themselves, knowing that before they even enter college? Here in Washington State, where I'm located here on the West Coast of the United States, I think about the graduation requirements. Financial literacy courses and even culinary skills are not a requirement upon graduation. Oftentimes people might ask, what does culinary skills have anything to do with higher ed skills and soft skills and hard skills? It absolutely does, because the better equipped they are to be independently living on their own, the less likely they're spending their funds constantly purchasing food. Financial literacy skills is equally as important. The difference between a credit and a savings account, a credit and a debit card, a checking and a savings account. When someone is taking out a loan, for instance, the difference between a subsidized loan versus an unsubsidized loan, that is an extremely vital point. For instance, in undergraduate studies at the University of Washington, when a student takes out a loan, predominantly it is subsidized, meaning it does not accrue interest when they take it out. For graduate and professional students, typically it is unsubsidized. It means that it accrues interest while they're in school. That is a significant factor that students need to be aware of as they navigate the education system. When I think about financial literacy skills, the better informed they are upon graduation from secondary education, the better transfer they can still make those skills in higher education as well. In terms of internships, that's another great example that many of my colleagues just mentioned. Oftentimes here in the United States, and having been to schools and attending universities like the University of Washington, the University of Southern California, University of California, Berkeley, I'm using that as my sample size, I would say. Typically internships happen in the 3rd and 4th year of a student's undergraduate studies. I look at that and say, these soft skills that we've talked about today, the same soft skills that you kicked us off with, Lord, prior to the discussion, are directly applicable to any industry. We should be moving these internships up to the freshman and sophomore year, regardless if the student actually knows what they actually want to do post-graduation or not. They can still generate and develop these soft skills, like complex problem solving, like working with people, these interpersonal skills that regardless of the industry, they need to have. Dennis talked beautifully about alumni perspective. At the University of Washington, we have a well-recognized and established program called the Huskies at Work program. It oftentimes follows this pattern. And in the post-COVID-19 era, this is something that we can maneuver and apply, I think, very well across the country. It pairs one alum with 1 to 3 students at the University of Washington. And they're able to meet through Zoom, on the phone, in person, or some mixture of those. What's so unique about that program is that student can then shadow the alum in the industry, have an informational interview, and also develop the soft skills and hard skills that they need to know prior to graduation. One of the biggest challenges students face, especially first generation students, those that have not had their parents go to college, those that may not even know how to fill out a FAFSA, which is the federal application for student aid in the United States, they don't even know how to navigate that. And so if they're equipped with a knowledge base and skill set to do some of those things, they're able to then transfer those skills in higher education. And that mentorship program has been going on for 5 years. It's been done really well. What we've noticed is every year, the bandwidth of alums are here, but the bandwidth of students are here, meaning the demand exceeds the need exceeds the demand. That's a challenge that every university faces. We have wonderful alumni, but we don't have enough alumni to mentor the students, but we can cultivate that through strategic partnerships and engaging students when they're in the campus setting. So when they graduate, this mentorship is second nature to them because they're thinking about how they were mentored themselves. I also look at it from the industry perspective. We have soft skills and we have hard skills. I think about some of the high demand degrees in Washington State in the United States: medicine, computer science. I would even make an argument accounting. You need to have specific hard skills in place. For instance, in medicine, the field that I'm in, you need to have proper diagnosis and history taking, management, treatment, physical examination. Those are absolute hard skills you need to have. However, as of late in the last 5 years, on the board exams, both prior to medical school and in medical schools, they've noticed that physicians needed some additional investment in bedside matters, quote unquote, and their soft science skills and their interpersonal skills. So they integrated that in the admissions test, the MCAT, the medical college admissions test, and the board exams, and the step 1, 2, and 3 board exams, because they realized that even though hard skills are greatly emphasized in the field of medicine, they need to put the same emphasis on soft skills. You can make the same argument for computer science and accounting as well. So I look at those 4 specific layers. I think about faculty and their role, not only as professors, but as mentors as well. All of those components come together, and I think can really emphasize how we look at higher education. And frankly speaking, I think this starts in secondary education that then feeds into higher education. And so I thought that would be helpful, as context does matter. Thank you.
Wow, so many important things you said there. You're absolutely spot on that we often get students in higher ed and there's no previous experience with some of the stuff, which is interesting, right? Because we go to school to get educated and learn how to live life effectively. So it does start before higher ed. For example, this is mental health. How do we deal with self-awareness and communication? It should be right K through 12 and just continue through secondary and higher ed. And so important that we start early with the soft skills management and the hard skills, and it's a balance, right? I have 25 years in the healthcare administration space, and I absolutely am smiling so big because you are integrating soft skills into medicine, right? So we have to stop with this either or approach and integrate for a holistic, well-balanced education experience. Thank you, Daman. That was excellent, excellent stuff. I agree with everything. Dr. JR.
Yes, thank you. It's been really interesting listening to all the other speakers, and I think I can build upon many of the comments that they've had. Personally, I've had the pleasure of having 2 different careers, one in private sector, doing high tech and management consulting, and also in academia as a professor and a vice dean, both in the US and here in South Korea, where I'm at now. And interestingly, when I was on both sides, what I would hear when I was in industry was, I wish the people that were coming to us were better prepared from the universities. And in university, what I would hear from my colleagues was, I wish we knew what industry wanted so we could teach better. And even though there were lots of advisory panels and connections on both sides, there's an invisible wall almost, and there's a mistranslation of what is being communicated on both sides. And I think that's really important to understand, in that it seems like there is sort of this transfer of information across the wall a lot, and not the integration that I heard the other speakers really imploring, which I think is important. And so if we go deeper on that particular area, how do we get more integration? How do we get more real integration that matters? So both sides get what they want. We know what to teach, and we know that the students who are coming to us in industry have those skills that we want. And what I've seen is some really new models happening. And I think that's a really important point is particularly for academia, are they willing to adopt new models, not just the teach from a syllabus, teach a semester kind of model that is sort of becoming the anti-solution, if you will. And I want to point to one example that we picked up on that started to really change that dynamic that I discussed. And it came from the University of Waterloo up in Canada. And what they did for their high-tech students was they not only talked to companies in high-tech industry, but they integrated those companies into their curriculum. I'm talking about Apple and Microsoft and Google. And they also then changed the semester format. So it became 3 weeks learning in particular, very specific needs described by those high-tech companies, and then 3 weeks of internships or externships. And it would continue. And so what we saw was breaking that model of, hey, we'll have a panel, we'll have an advisory group and all those things, but more of an integrated cross-pollination right in the classroom. And then using that, what they learned as an on-the-job experience, not after they graduate, but while they're learning. And so I think this idea of trying to change the model that we've had for almost millennia of the semester format in a classroom, when you graduate, then you go to work and learn the extra stuff that you need, and changing that to inviting the companies into the classroom, letting them help shape the curricula, and having the students have the training while they're learning. I think that's really maybe new paradigms that we can think about in bringing these two areas together.
Well, Dr. JR, so many important things. I have the same benefit as you, one foot in academia and the other in healthcare management, healthcare administration. And it's interesting that there is this mistranslation when the conversation happens. So it's very important to get targeted and specific and keep the conversations going. Clear communication. I absolutely love that you brought up new models and new paradigms. Higher ed is facing increased competition and pressure from massive open online courses, right? Who are partnering with the Ivy Leagues. And folks are getting certified with a certificate from Yale, and it's happening in 6 or 7 weeks. This old model of 15 weeks is painful. I teach in online and traditional settings. Recently, I was asked to teach something ground that I teach online in 7 weeks. And I kept thinking to myself as I'm preparing the course for the ground setting, who would schedule 15 weeks when they could take this in 7? It doesn't make sense from an efficiency standpoint. So we really have to start looking at micro-learning and other tools and technologies where this learning can occur, can be immediately applied in the work environment, and feedback loop, immediate. You talked about the beautiful partnerships. We have to start shifting in that direction, or the value will be even more significantly decreased in the higher education space. Thank you so much for that. Daniel.
Thank you. It's been fascinating to hear what everyone's said, and it aligns in big picture terms, and it aligns with my work on 21st century skills and preparation for them. I'm going to share a couple of models that I think tie together a lot of the themes that we've heard today, and suggest that if we talk about the problems and we identify sets of tools, honestly, I feel like we've got all the tools we need. We can solve this. In fact, I don't think we need anything new to solve this. I think if we were going to solve it using the business as usual approach, it would have been solved. We wouldn't be talking about it. So we do have to change the way we consider things. On a micro level, I want to talk about a learning modality that I use in many of my classes, and that is partnership with companies and organizations to provide a learning opportunity for students. Typically, it goes something like this. I'm teaching a certain amount of skills during the course of a term. My terms are 7 weeks, but throughout the course of a term, and students in groups or individually are working on a semester-long project in partnership with a company or organization. We call them learning partners. And this is a good way for students to learn and apply in a safe and supportive atmosphere. The students sometimes will recruit their own learning partners, particularly if it's a group-based activity. And in other cases, the faculty will also recruit learning partners. The good thing about this is that the individual faculty who's teaching can compare the things that the student needs to learn with the things that the organization wants and find a zone where there's happy learning and happy delivery and everybody gets something valuable out of the experience. The weakness with this model is that it doesn't scale. It's up to one faculty member to make that effort, or maybe a department. It's hard to get across the board faculty members who are that level of engaged and to ensure consistency of quality or consistency of learning experience. And that doesn't mention anything at all about constantly calling the same companies. Oh, I got called by the engineering department this time, and next time it's a different part of the technology group, or it's the business students, and they all want projects. So I think that there's a weakness in that model. As successful as it is on a class-to-class basis, I think there's a weakness there. So I propose something else. A lot of universities have a career services office. Some don't, but a lot of them do. And traditionally, it looks like career services office function as a place to post ads for jobs. Nothing really substantially better than that. They may have workshops on how to write a CV. They may have workshops on how to conduct an interview or to prepare for an interview. But a large majority of career services offices at universities just sort of sit there at the coordination level from, I got an announcement and I need to announce it. I'll host some people here in my office, maybe for on-campus interviews. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not optimized. So I suggest that career services offices be rethought, that they become something called a Center for Career or Professional Development, Center for Professional Development. And that comes with a higher set of responsibilities to think more holistically about career development and to become the place that coordinates with our outside constituents, the stakeholder groups that we've been talking about today, the employers, that the Center for Professional Development becomes the place to go back and forth between the curriculum and the industry. So that there is more to it than that one single practitioner, like I was mentioning, who cares, and that we can systematize, as Gus said earlier, we need to systematize this by having it be another tool that we can do. Nothing will change. If we don't systematize this and make somebody purposely responsible, a team or an organization within our higher ed institutions, if we don't make that change, then it'll just be another one of the initiatives that have come and it worked a little bit here and it didn't work in most places. So my example of how we might tackle this is to take everything that we've talked about and to make it the responsibility of a designated organization that evolves from the concept of a career services center and becomes a center for professional development, so that companies can come and say, this is what we're looking for. And instead of the response being, oh, you need to talk to this student or this student, the response becomes, let's make sure that you and the faculty from that department get together so we can evolve the curriculum. It goes beyond matchmaking. And it goes well into breaking down the silos. It goes into upskilling the faculty, because now the faculty can talk almost directly to the industry partners. But there is a champion in our organizations who's tasked and responsible for facilitating that. And that becomes the bigger mission of the Career Services Office of the future, which is a Center for Professional Development.
Daniel, that is just a beautiful model. And I did look into that a little bit earlier through one of your posts. It is would be so meaningful if we could develop that model and so that it was scalable and it approached things from an ecosystem perspective. But how beautiful would that be if those Center for Professional Developments at different universities were collaborating, right? And sharing the knowledge and the information from a global perspective. So this is, you know, connecting the dots, basically. The other important thing that you said was, and we should draw attention to, the changing nature of faculty. It's not the old days for faculty. We do so much more. You know, I remember my freshman year sociology class. He came in twice a week with a pot of coffee and a pack of Pall Mall, and he just lectured and walked back in front of the room. Today, we are so interactive and involved in our students' schoolwork, some of their life problems, and sometimes we don't have enough tools, even though these tools exist. And that's another important thing you said. This is not rocket science. We have the tools, we have the technology, and we probably could capture the willingness, because it's change or die at this point for a lot of universities, to make this happen. Amazing, amazing stuff. I wanted to tell you that I love your model. I love your model. Has everyone gotten an opportunity to speak first round? Is Humam here? Hold on.
Yep, I'm here.
Humam.
I'm here. Awesome.
Hi. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. No worries.
Limited in my visual here.
It's all good. It's all good. So I'm just gonna give a few points. First of all, I'm glad that I'm at least the youngest around here, and I'm proud to hear different analogies and different points of view over here. So I'm gonna give a different perspective in terms of the industry itself and some type of analogy regarding vocational training and practicality of the industry itself. So thoughts about stuff other than just education. I'm going to start with different points of view from developing and developed countries, since I've studied in both. Was the simplicity and going back to basics. So I'm going to be straightforward. While studying in developed countries, a student is not asked to seek permission before leaving the class, whether it's for a phone call, whether even for going to the toilet. Doesn't matter. If he's an adult, she's an adult, doesn't matter. But in developing countries, such situations are actually emphasized. No, you still need permission to leave a room. How the hell are we expecting for different students and young professionals to seek different practices if, going back to basics and basic human needs, those aren't covered? Hence, different practices other than just normal academia. Another point, which is I'm also going to focus on the perspective of a young professional and a student. Students usually seek belonging, seek communities. We need to focus further on their whys. I know it sounds a bit theoretical and it sounds a bit more as a life coach, but this specific point is what usually drags a student to go towards self-learning or going towards other industries. It could also affect what they truly want instead of pushing them towards engineering and management most of the times, and sometimes medicine as well, in every single country. And we're not talking about only developed or even developing countries. So another point which I have been realizing throughout the previous years, which was coaching, the need towards further coaches in each and every industry. That being said, those coaches being integrated within each and every university, hence having more and more coaches than just educators. Coaches in terms of having the students, and that starts even from school perspective and not just universities and higher education. Hence having more coaches, more counselors, people that could actually understand day-to-day life instead of having tons of students and not being able to. Something similar to TAs in most universities, but in this case, we're talking about further practices, whether it's leadership, team building. I'll get back to that in a second. Further emphasis on different projects, and that has also been a gap between different countries. Emphasis on projects, and not just for senior year and not for a specific curriculum. No, having more projects, more practicality would actually have the mindset pivoted towards project management. A small example that I really loved, and I bumped into a big global firm just a few days ago, and they have this new employee acting as a project manager, but in a legal firm. Hence, project management should also be integrated into different courses and again, coaching and project management instead of just educating. So project management, no matter whatever the industry we're talking about, would be a critical thing to learn. Having different catalysts and cross-industry networkers, different organizations, sometimes those might be even startups. I'm going to give a few examples from even developing countries that I have been working with throughout the past several years. Now, another point that I really loved that was brought up, which was entrepreneurship in every university and the entrepreneurial zone. But what skips the mind usually is the idea of having entrepreneurs, having people that could collaborate in every industry, whether it's corporate, traditional small businesses, micro businesses, it doesn't really matter, but having employees. Being an employee isn't a bad thing. Not everyone was born a leader, and that is totally normal. And if you cannot be led, you cannot lead. And that coming from a perspective, I myself am a business and management consultant. And another thing that I wanted to emphasize was the idea of having students to learn how to self-learn. This is tough. And again, this is usually educated or taught back in school, but not enough emphasis was ever made. I'm giving the normal situation towards most young professionals. I started my personal consulting career and coaching career since I was 17. I entered university while I was 17. I started in pre-med, and then, you know what? I decided to go towards business, both my choice. But the idea of mentioning that was the idea of my struggles, and the same way that I've seen people usually say that theory is not the same as practice. And that's where I say, you're wrong. What helped me a lot, starting as a young consultant, was the idea of taking theory since I was in university and putting that into practice every single day, giving back to the society. Again, this goes back to creating a community belonging for each and every university student. And another point, which would be having more coaches, I did mention that, but organizations and startups, I'm going to give a small example, such as there was a startup found a few years ago, which was called EIC, Engineering International Corporation. And the idea was behind that was integrating different engineering students with factories and solving those problems. And it was founded by engineering students while they were in university. Another small example, which would be Beirut today, I did mentor them very recently. And the idea of both of them are super young founders, and what they're trying to integrate right now, which is working with young journalists and having them outsourced. Hence, the idea of side gigs, the idea of hustling is taught even further for university students. And it doesn't mean that all of them are entrepreneurs per se, but all of them are trying and thriving towards their same industry. Another small example would be International Youth Ambassadors Foundation, they started up with integrating different Model United Nations globally with different university students and different universities. And that being said, up until today, whether alumni or different students right now, schools, universities, they're still active. And that turned them towards an entrepreneurial accelerator than just being a Model United Nations organization or integrating Model United Nations. So different industries need different catalysts, different networkers. And I'm just gonna finalize with the idea of leadership, team building. It is more crucial than said, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Team building, communication. Most individuals cannot write a proper email. I know it's called a soft skill, but for today's market, and even previously, we should start calling them as hard skills, whether, again, team building, communications, the idea of financial literacy, integrating the idea of ROI. Why are you currently studying in university? What are your intentions? It sounds cheesy, but it is what is needed currently for students. And again, I'm giving from a coach perspective mostly. So yeah, that is my current analogy for the current question.
Thank you, Humam. So many things that you said there that echoed a lot of what our colleagues are saying here. But one thing I'd like to point out about what you said, which is very, very important. You said teaching students how to learn, which is really the bottom line here. I was told years and years and years ago by a teacher, if you can write well and you can speak well, and if you can learn, there's nothing you cannot do. And that's really the bottom line here. How do we do a better job of that? I really love your focus on the coaching, the mentoring, and the counseling, because it looks at a student holistically. I have so many students that have stress, anxiety, depression, and all kinds of accommodations. And it can get a little tricky to manage 60 students that all need special consideration. But we do it on the corporate side. I did regular one-on-ones. Build these into the courses and into the curriculums so that we have a pulse on where our students are. If a student is hungry, and we have students in the US in university that do not have enough food to eat. If a student is hungry, it's going to be real challenging to learn. So again, you point out to really take a holistic look at each individual and focus on this coaching, mentoring, and counseling, which is really at the heart of education, if we define it that way. Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. We're getting close to the hour. Linda, do we have a few minutes to go around the room one more time for some last comments? A lot of light bulbs. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go around the room. Thank you, everyone, for your extremely valuable participation and commentary. Goosebumps. If we could just go around one more time, get some last minute commentary. I see on my Zoom room, Daniel, you're first in my queue here. Last minute comments.
Sure thing. I think there's a broad agreement here in the types of problems and challenges that we face. And I think it's going to take concerted effort to really break through, because the conditions that got us here as an industry aren't really changing. The direction the industry is going as a sector is, and the context that we find ourselves is changing dramatically. So we have to think differently. We have to really change the model structurally in order to make sure that we have that bridge built between academia and industry. Whether we're talking about small business or big business, doesn't matter. We need to make sure that we're thinking faster than we used to.
Beautiful. Agility and transformation. Ghassan.
Yes, I want to conclude it like this. I think when you look at the United States educational system and industry, even though many of the panelists are from the United States, I think we can learn a whole lot. I'm talking about other countries, because many of the universities, not just the big ones, the well-known, I'm not talking about Stanford and Berkeley and so on, I'm talking about most universities there have realized what we're talking about, not just today, but many years ago. And there are lots of work that has been done. There is a big trust. This is one thing, by the way, that is lacking in developing countries when you compare it with the United States. The trust between industry and education or academia. In the United States, from what I've seen since I studied there, from my bachelor to the PhD, the trust is there. There is no university without any industrial links, whether it was NASA or CBAF or other huge governmental or non-governmental institutions. So yes, the issue of alumni also in the United States. I have never seen any country that focuses on alumni as I've seen the American universities. I wish I can see that here. We are trying to get in touch with our alumni here, but I don't think we are that much successful. Yeah, we do some invitation for some of the alumni every 2 years, but no, not just as I've seen that, having a complete alumni system that connects graduates. I still receive emails from the school where I went in Toledo, Ohio, till today. Every week or 2 weeks, I receive an email. That system, I think, even though you could criticize whatever you want today, the educational system there, but from my point of view, I think as someone who teaches or who works in a country like United Arab Emirates or in Jordan, as where I was teaching, I can learn. I'm still learning from just visiting many of the American universities. I don't want to be too prejudiced to the United States education, but I am to a certain extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I love your focus on, again, this knowledge sharing our experience across the globe, across different industries, across layers. It's sharing and the relationship of trust through sharing of information, experience, and innovations. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Humam.
As a final point, I would I usually focus on creating the idea of what are your current interests, what are your current hobbies for different students, university students. Again, I usually love to go back to basics, and most young professionals choose either the career path or their social life, but you could actually collaborate in both regarding interests and hobbies. Most university students, most young professionals lack hobbies. They do not have any hobbies or interests or feel lost. This could help a lot towards, again, accessing different or approaching different industries. Another point that I forgot actually to mention and is worth mentioning, which is people usually say, and I've never focused on this up until recently, when an economist from the US came to Jordan and he stated, people keep on saying ecosystem, ecosystem. And he's like, which ecosystem are we talking about? It's supposed to be ecosystems, plural. And again, integrating cross industry. Another methodology that is also worth mentioning, which is shadowing. Shadowing that is usually found in different corporates, but this could also be implemented with startups, with different industries. And again, looking at innovation and looking at innovation in a different perspective. For example, opening up a venture that support legal students or law students and a different perspective. So instead of giving advisory and consultancy, you could actually start creating different ideas as startups, or again, whether you're an employer or an employee, creating a new venture in an innovative way. New methodologies right now, post-COVID, have shown us different methodologies, different needs. Some of them are a bit challenging, but are worth mentioning as well. Hence, discovering, whether as educators or individuals, young professionals seeking a new career path, this is also worth mentioning again. New methodologies as post-COVID, using technology, utilizing technology. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Humam. Again, restating this theme of partnership, collaboration, making it meaningful for students, meeting them where they are. Beautiful, beautiful. Who's up? Humam? Dr. JR, did you go? You haven't gone yet for finals. There you go.
Thank you. Just to add on to the conversation, one thing that strikes me is this trend that industry has of, in some cases, not even requiring a degree to get hired. And it says, and I've heard it described this way, for academia now, our competition isn't always other universities anymore. Our competition is YouTube. And there is a grain of truth in that, I had one professor describe a conversation he had with a student. The student would go to class to get credit, but he would go home and get on YouTube to learn what he really needed to learn or wanted to learn. So the sense of urgency and the sense of importance for us to push these ideas that we talked about today is very strong, because industry now is saying we may not need what you offer, we may not need your degree, and students are saying we may not need what you have in the classroom. I can get it somewhere else. It's not that we aren't able to give them what they need. I think we have to change, how we deliver it and what we're delivering.
So important, so important. I created a university on the corporate side myself to customize what we needed for our employees. So it's this, you're talking about this competition. We need to do a better job. My students tell me that if they don't know what to study, and when they do study, they often go to Google or somewhere else to get the information. And I'm like, wow. So this is the delivery, right? So we got to work on innovation here very quickly to increase value for the student dime, what they're paying for. So important. Who's up next? Ajit.
Thank you, Laura. Yes, I think the one important aspect is also a change of mindset from both academia and industry. Because industry says this is what we want, academia feels, no, this cannot be done. This cannot be integrated into our semester system. We find still some gaps being there. So the need of the hour is how to use the technology and integrate this gap between industry and academia. Because everyone feels, yes, you're training students for us. They feel they need to know the basics and standards. But in the process, a lot of things have changed. As somebody was talking of, information available on YouTube, information available on somewhere. So we should be able to take something to the classroom that's not that it's not available easily for them on social media, and which adds value to them to face the future challenges. So today, for example, I go to a class, I select a case study whose teaching notes is not available on Google first. I search for myself first, then go and give it to the students, because there's no point in giving the same case study if you're giving them and all the material is available to them there. So that's one thing. And when we talk to industry, they say, no, this is not what we expect. The academicians say this cannot be done in this way. So I think there is a huge gap, as Dr. Gassan said, or all others said. And I think the corporate, the career guidance cell should come in and we should have it. So in this juncture, what we are trying an experiment at Skyline University in Nigeria is, we are getting all the government organizations like small and medium enterprises, Ministry of Commerce, right? We are getting them on the table, the National Incubation Center, and we're also getting the local prominent companies together and linking with our Skyline Innovation Entrepreneurship Center. And we are asking them, see, these are our students. These are the skill sets that they have. We'll make them present their ideas and proposals, and we'll ask them what is missing, and they will ask us to give us the inputs on how we have to create the curriculum and see that it fits them. Hope it works. We are trying to link all of them together and getting there, because end of the day, yes, we want to be an international university, but we also have to meet the local needs. So we believe in think global, act local. There are a lot of conversations you have, and I think that works for us here, and we're trying to do that here. And I think we have to use the technology. Now that we don't have the option of not, and all the academia also has to change the way we teach. As somebody said, the methodologies that we follow. I think there'll be a complete transformation in the coming next 5-10 years. And in the process, I think the topmost priority should be for the industry requirements, because at the end of the day, if industry skills, if we know what skills the industry needs, identify those skills, and first upskill the faculty. Again, I feel, because faculties there are somebody with 30-40 years back. If you don't upskill the faculty and you want the students to be ready for the future requirements, it becomes, and all higher educational institutions have to invest a lot on upskilling the faculty, because that's the need of the hour, because new technologies have come where faculty have no idea how to use it. So unless we train the faculty and upskill the faculty, I think automatically it will go to the students, and we'll be able to achieve something in having the right skills in the students to move forward. That's my conclusion. Thank you.
That's great, Ajit. So you're talking all about change, changing mindsets, changing models, changing faculty. But what's really important is leveraging technology, right?
Yes.
Leveraging information technology, simulations, machine learning. It's here, it's been here, and we have to leverage it. Beautiful. Naman.
Thank you. As folks were speaking, I was reflecting on a quote that it takes a village to raise a child. I think in many ways you can directly transfer that. It takes a village to help navigate a student through the higher education system and ultimately enter the industry. When we think about faculty, staff, students, the administration, the community partners, we oftentimes have to ask ourselves, especially in the United States, at public institutions, how do we continue to remain relevant? We have to look at public institutions and think about the funding model. And this is why it's so crucial that as much as we focus on this conversation in public institutions, we're also thinking about how do we remain relevant, and that's through funding. So reaching out to our state legislators, our federal lawmakers, and saying, hey, if we want to have these soft skills and these hard skills within students as they ultimately graduate, we have to continue to invest in higher education. And so that means having that conversation about the importance of it, making sure that folks understand that a student that's more educated is less likely to be reliant on social services, less likely to be incarcerated, less likely to be in debt, more likely to contribute to the state's economy. These are conversations that are a part of this discussion, because in order for us to continue to solve these measurable outcomes, in order to solve these questions, we have to continue to have the funding as well. On the private side of things, we need to make the same argument to donors and community members to continue to invest in higher education. And lastly, I wanted to thank Majid and Linda for reaching out to me to speak today, and Laura for you helping us facilitate a conversation across the globe. One of the most challenging things to do, I would say, in any conference is to think about that from a global perspective, and then to bring that to the forefront as you have today. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Naman. So many important things you said: relevancy, the continued investment from government, from private industry, all over the place. Really, the goal here is improved global society, right? We're all in this together. We have to start sharing. Come on, who has not gone yet? Let me see. Dennis.
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to try and keep this quick, but one thing I do want to mention, especially for our audience out there, is we've offered a lot of why, and we've offered a lot of these high-level ideas and a little less in terms of granular how to do it. That's something that I want to encourage you to take this stuff back to your faculty, back to your deans or whoever your governing structure is, and say, let's see how we can do this and make this work for us. Remember, what works here at University of Florida may not work at Washington, may not work in Nigeria. A few things I wanted to comment on is actually addressing, Laura, what you said with your online courses being accelerated, and especially what we're talking about, how are we competing with YouTube? Well, let's embrace this idea of what YouTube is. This semester, I experimented with something and it went very well. Very well. The students loved it. And I got to say, this class, I did not deliver it as a fluff class. I used a flipped classroom approach. They watched the lectures offline and they came ready to discuss. And so it's that discussion that is half the value of college. I use Harvard cases as another example. You can write your own cases. You don't have to do that. The other aspect is always, when it comes to college, I encourage the co-curricular, the organizations. That's where a lot of those soft skills are built, if you can't build them in the classroom, which I have managed to do. Speaking to Newman, I love that you identified financial and culinary skills as required. We've actually done that here, and speaking to those alumni, what we have found is that it reduces some of that stress on adjusting to the real life so they can focus on their career success. And so you hit the nail on the head with that. Gosh, you asked something about alumni. I got to tell you that alumni engagement starts freshman year. If you can make sure that you're offering customer delight, if you will, to those freshmen all the way to their end year, they're going to want to give back. And so I think that is also real important. Daniel, you mentioned career services not working very well. We just basically bucked the trend. We have our campus career services, and what they don't do, our college, our business college, has their own career services that start offering workshops presented by industry. And so and of course we use a sponsorship approach, which allows us to also generate additional revenue, so we don't have to worry about incurring more cost to the student on that. And teaching students to learn, I really just want to underscore that again, having a teaching assistant and a mentorship style approach to what you're doing can do that. And there are absolute ways, especially with projects, especially with working with industry, to help build a lot of those soft skills. And just to echo what someone else said, thank you for your time here. And I appreciate the audience's time in engaging with us and hopefully taking some of this stuff back to their homes.
Thank you, Dennis. All points were excellent. I flip the classroom all the time, and the students love it. They are so engaged. There's much to be said. You learn through teaching. So I love your flip the classroom idea. Did I get everybody? I think I've gotten everybody. Did everybody speak for the last round? I think so. Folks, this was an amazing session, truly amazing, and goosebumps. Can't wait to start working with you on empowering higher ed.